There is a story told about a girl who came home from school, and her mother asked her, "What did you learn today?" And she said, "Oh, we learned about the Exodus from Egypt." And the mother said, "Really? That's so interesting. Well, what did they teach you?" And the girl paused a moment, and she said, "Well, you see, a long, long time ago, far, far away, the Israelites, they were enslaved in this land called Egypt, and they were treated really, really bad. They finally decided that they were going to engineer this mass escape. And they escaped from Egypt, they crossed a small amount of the desert, and they came to the Sea of Reeds. The Egyptians thought, they're trapped over there, we can get them back." But the Israelites had anticipated that, and they had their engineers build a pontoon bridge across the Sea of Reeds, and they crossed over the bridge. But the Egyptian army got to the other end of the bridge just as the Israelites got out on the other side, and they started crossing the bridge too. And again, the Israelites had anticipated that too. And when the entire Egyptian army was on the pontoon bridge, the Israelite sappers under the bridge blew up the bridge, and the entire Egyptian army fell into the sea, and they drowned. And that's how the Israelites were saved from their slavery in Egypt. Mother looked at the girl and said, "That's what they taught you in school?" And the girl said, "Well, not really, but if I told you what they told me, what they taught me, you wouldn't believe it." Now, the point over here of the story is, do we believe it? I mean, do we blame the girl for being skeptical? After all, when was the last time anyone saw a miracle? Now, I don't mean just a miracle that, oh wow, that's a miracle that happened. If it hadn't happened, this would have happened and that would have happened. Someone might say, well, yeah, you were very, very lucky. Yeah, it just happened by chance. But no, I mean something that you look at and say, wow, that's got to be a miracle, like the splitting of the sea. And not only for you alone, not just one or two people, or a small group of people, but public, thousands and thousands of millions of people. When was the last time that happened? Well, what if I were to tell you that right now is the 30th anniversary of a worldwide miracle? A miracle that actually happened 30 years ago and which the whole world saw and heard about. More than 2,000 years ago, the great warrior and judge, Gideon, lamented, "Where are all the wonders of which our forefathers told us about?" That's in Judges. And yet, here 30 years ago, we had a public wonder. The problem with it was that one has to know what to look for in order to know that it was a miracle. You see, it's not just a matter of looking at what happened. One has to look at what didn't happen. And so we go back 30 years to the Persian Gulf War. It took place from 17 January through 28 February 1991. 39 Scuds were fired at Israel from Iraq. 2 Israelis were killed, 11 were seriously injured. The question is it a miracle? Now, undoubtedly, there were people who were there who saw the buildings collapsing and saw people coming out alive and sometimes unscathed, who said, this is a miracle. But, that was emotion. I mean, how do we know that it was a miracle? Well, you see, first of all, 39 Scuds, well, not all of them actually fell in residential areas. Some of them fell into the Mediterranean, some of them were duds, some of them were shot down by patriots, some of them fell in the wilderness. But the fact is that there were 14 Scuds, and by the way, not just 14 Scuds, but also 4 Patriot missiles which missed their targets and fell also and blew up in residential areas. 14 Scuds plus 4 Patriots that blew up in residential areas. 14 Scuds, 2 people killed. It attracted scientific attention. There was a scientific paper, passed through peer review by Fetter, Lewis, and Grunland. It appeared in the journal Nature. Now, Nature is one of the 2 premier scientific journals in the world. One of them is Nature, the British journal. The other one is Science, the American journal. So this is a very, very respected scientific journal. Nature, January 28, 1993, 2 years later. And the title of the paper is Why was Scud casualties so low? So obviously the numbers look very strange. They attracted scientific attention. And they have a formula, probably developed by the military, that tells you, you tell it, a missile comes down in a place, what's the population density, how many pounds is the warhead of the missile, do the people have warning that the missile is coming, and you put it into the formula, and out comes a number that tells you how many people are expected to be killed by that missile, how many people are expected to be seriously injured by that missile, how many buildings are expected to be destroyed by that missile, assuming that it lands in a residential area, of course. And you try out the formula. You see, there was this war, took place toward the end of 1987 through the beginning of 1988. It was called the War of the Cities. It took place between Iraq and Iran. And Iraq fired 125 Scud missiles. Now, by the way, this was the Al-Hussein Scud B, the modified Scud B missile, the same one that was used in the Persian Gulf War. We're talking about exactly the same missile. So they fired 125 missiles at Tehran, of which 86 Scuds actually blew up in Tehran. Over a period of 52 days, 422 people were killed. The number of people killed per Scud is 4.9. And in Israel, it takes 7 Scuds to kill one person. You see the discrepancy. Now, of course, we don't know yet for sure, because the population density might be different, and it could be also that the Iranians didn't have warning that the missiles were coming, and the Israelis did, at least for some of the missiles. So we have to hold our judgment, but it's clear that something strange seems to be happening. Let's take a look elsewhere, around the world, wherever Scud missiles actually were used. First of all, in the Persian Gulf War, there were 5 Scuds that landed in Riyadh and Dhahran, Saudi Arabia. 29 people were killed. On October 27th, 1982, Desful, Iran, 1 Scud killed 21 people. On April 4th, 1985, in Bakhtaran, Iran, and in Hamadan, Iran, the first one killed 25 people, the second one killed 11. May 11th, 1994, Sa'ana, Yemen, 1 Scud kills 25 people. May 22nd, 1994, in Aden, Yemen, 1 Scud kills 6 people. And 2 days later, another one in Sana'a, Yemen, kills 13 people. October 21st, 1999, Grozny, Chechnya, 2 Scuds. One kills 27 people, the other one kills 17 people. February 19, 2013, Aleppo and Tal Rifa'at, Syria, 4 Scuds kill 141 people. Outside Israel, 18 Scuds kill 335 people. And if we take into account also the ones that were killed in Tehran during the Iran-Iraq War, the average comes out to 7.2 people killed per Scud. And yet in Israel, the average is 0.14 person killed per Scud. 14 Scuds killed 2 people. Takes 7 to kill 1. So think about it. In Israel, we have 12 Scuds. Comes down in a residential area. We're not talking about the ones that missed. We're not talking about the duds. They exploded in residential areas of Tel Aviv or Haifa. It blows up, buildings collapse, gas lines are opened up, electrical cables are exposed, shards of glass are flying everywhere, tremendous blast, collapsing pieces of concrete. No one is killed. And again, the same thing. No one is killed. And no one is killed. And again, 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 and again. 12 times, no one is killed. And then, with 2 Scuds, kill 1 person each. And yet, outside of Israel, it takes 7 Scuds to kill. Inside of Israel, it takes 7 Scuds to kill 1 person. Elsewhere, each Scud kills more than 7 people on the average. In Tel Aviv, 28 buildings containing 118 occupied apartments, because remember that during the Scud War, they were afraid of poison gas. So they weren't going to the shelters. They were in their sealed rooms in the apartments that were totally destroyed. 28 buildings containing 118 occupied apartments that were totally destroyed. 2,493 apartments that were heavily damaged. And in Haifa, an additional 1,700 apartments that were very heavily damaged. And still, only 2 people were killed. Notice, the buildings were not protected, only the people. The number of buildings destroyed is exactly what the formula predicts should have been destroyed. Fetter et al. In their paper in the journal Nature, and I quote, "Why is it that less people die in Israel from 14 Scuds than die anywhere else, from a single Scud?" Unquote. Something very strange is going on here. Okay, here are the numbers. Let's evaluate. Is it a miracle or is it not? The paper, by the way, says the Israelis were lucky. Now, what's luck? Luck, if I flip a coin 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and I get heads every single time, you might say that's luck. Good luck, 6 times? Yeah, you're really lucky. Supposing I flip it 20 times in a row, and I get heads every single time. Are you going to ascribe that to luck? Or are you going to say, no, there's something funny going on here. Let me see that coin. Let me evaluate the coin. There's something funny about that coin. Or let me watch carefully how you flip it. Something is going on. You know why? Because the odds are 1,000,000 to 1, approximately. 1,000,000 to 1 that you'd flip a fair coin, flip it 20 times, and get heads every single time. 30 times, it's 1,000,000,000 to 1, approximately. Okay, so here we go. Use the formula. How many people were expected to be killed in Israel during the Persian Gulf War? Answer, 24.2. How many were killed? 2. Now, interestingly enough, the paper does not calculate the probability of that happening. They should have, because that's the way to evaluate, is it luck or is it not luck? If the odds are great enough, if the probability is small enough, you say, nah, that couldn't happen, just like flipping a coin 20 or 30 times and getting heads every single time. They didn't calculate the probability. They just said it was luck. So I went ahead and did it. I calculated the probability. I'm a mathematician. I've been calculating probabilities for decades for the United States Department of Defense. The probability is 102 million to 1. 102 million to 1. And for those of you who want to follow the calculations, for those of you who want more details about it, it's all in this book, The Cosmic Puzzle. This is where this information is taken from. Now, in terms of the seriously injured, 70.4 people were expected to be seriously injured. Only 11 were. The odds, 600 billion to 1. Not million, billion. This is far beyond what anyone would call luck. And it is also meets the scientific threshold for believability. For saying something is scientific based on statistical information, this is far beyond. Usually, for publication in a journal, you only need 1 in 20. 20 to 1, that's all. Okay? Sometimes in medical field, 100 to 1. In the field of high energy physics, it's a couple of billion to 1. Here we talk about 600 billion to 1. And the Persian Gulf War ends on Purim, which is just a few weeks away, the day of salvation for the Jewish people. Now, if something is truly scientific, it ought to be reproducible. That means that someone else should be able to do the same experiment, or you have a different situation in which the same thing happens, and that way you verify, hey, this is really a true effect. See, it didn't just happen one time, and you can say, well, regardless of what the odds are, maybe it was just luck. Who knows? But if it happens over and over again, then you verified the phenomenon is a true phenomenon. And we have that here. Let's take the 2006 Israel Hezbollah War. This was Katyusha rockets instead of Scuds, but of course we take that into account in the formula. A minimum of 913 of these Katyusha rockets exploded in residential areas of Haifa, Hadera, Nazaret, Tveria, Nahariya, Sfas, Afula, Kiryat Shimona, Bet She'an, Carmiel, Malo, and including a hospital in Sfas that was heavily damaged. 53 people were killed. Now, you know what that means? It means it took between 17 and 18 rockets to kill each person. 17 to 18 rockets. And in Israel, you need 7 to kill 1. Here, 17 to kill 1. Outside of Israel, each rocket kills, on the average, more than 7. Here are the numbers. 53 people were killed during this 2006 Israel Hezbollah War, but you expected 131.9 people to be killed. The odds against that are 203 trillion to 1. not million, not billion, trillion, 203 trillion to 1, that could have happened just by chance. Seriously injured, 250 people were seriously injured, but you expected 387.3 people to be seriously injured. That's odds of 18 trillion to 1. Now note, someone might think that perhaps because Israel had been bombarded by missiles before and also by bombs, perhaps their hospital system is so good that they're saving a lot of these people. But you see, if that were the case, you would be decreasing the number of people from dying, but you'd be increasing the number of people who are seriously injured, because the person who would have died otherwise got good medical care. He was only injured, not killed. But that's not the case. You don't see an increase in the number of serious injuries. You see a decrease of both, meaning it has nothing to do with the Israeli medical system or the amount of attention or how fast they get them to the hospital. This is an effect that's happening on the ground at the time of the explosion. And once again, reproducibility. We go to 2008, the Gaza War. 1,750 missiles, Katyushas and Qassams, were fired at Ashdod, Beersheba, and Ashkelon. We estimate that approximately 75% of them were the smaller missiles, the Qassams, and only 25 the Katyushas. Okay? And not all of them hit, but enough of them did. We estimate approximately 23%. And again, the numbers can be found in here, and the justification for them are in the book, The Cosmic Puzzle. 15 people were killed, but you expected 58.4 people to be killed. Odds, 54 billion to 1. That's not luck. Now, in terms of the serious injuries, I could not find the data for that, and therefore I couldn't make the computation, but the data was there for the number of people that were killed. This is far beyond luck. Now, one might wonder why, in the Feder paper that was published in Nature, did they not calculate the odds? It's not hard to do. If any person took an elementary course in statistics, could have done it. Surely, I suspect they did it, and they didn't want to publish the numbers, because then they couldn't say it was luck. They would have to face the question of, how did this happen if it's not luck? The combined probability of over the 3 wars, what is the probability that each one of those could have been just luck, just chance? Serious injuries, it's a decimal point followed by 29 zeros and a 7. Decimal point, 29 zeros and a 7. For the number of killed, it's a decimal point followed by 29 zeros and a 3. You know what that's equivalent to? That's not equivalent to flipping a coin 20 times and getting heads. That's not equivalent to flipping a coin 30 times and getting heads. That's like flipping a coin 98 times and getting heads every single time. Would anyone think for a moment that just happened by chance? Oh, I was just lucky. Flip the coin 98 times, get heads every single time. Just luck. No one in his right mind would believe something like that. If you prefer to think of it in terms of money, everyday kind of thing, no one stands around flipping a coin 98 times, think of it this way. What's the probability that someone, a total stranger who has done no research, a total stranger, could guess your credit card number and use it to buy whatever he wants and max it out? Not just the 16 digits on the credit card, but also the expiration date and the 3-digit security code and your name and your address. What's the chances that just by chance he's going to say, well, I'll take a guess. He gets all 16 digits right and the expiration date and the security code, and he guesses your name and he guesses where you live. Do you know something? The odds of these 3 wars preventing people from dying and getting such a low count of number of killed and number of seriously injured is 100 million times more significant than someone guessing all that information on your credit card. If you believe that happened just by chance, you better not use your credit card anymore, because someone might just guess it and max you out. Ruin your credit rating. It's not luck. It can't be luck. Notice, again, the number of buildings that were destroyed matches what the formula predicts should be destroyed. The buildings are not protected. The people inside the buildings are protected. Figure that one out. Who can ensure that an occupied building collapses from a massive explosion, it buries people underneath, Glass shards are flying everywhere, exposed electrical cables, gas lines disrupted. And at the end, people just dust themselves off and walk away. Only 11 injuries and 2 people are killed. And all the rest of them, 12 times, no one is killed. There's only one answer, and that is it was a miracle. It unfolded in front of the entire world. Everyone knew about it over more than a month, just 30 years ago. But most people didn't know what to look at what didn't happen rather than what did happen. Now, I happen to have a story that I heard from a friend of mine who's since deceased. He worked for the Department of Defense. And he was in a place where they were monitoring the missiles flying into Israel from satellite photographs and so on. And each time they had a television, with the Israeli news indicating how many people were injured, how many people were killed. And after the first few missiles fell down, some of the senior people came over to my friend, who was clearly an Orthodox Jew, and said to him, "What the dash is going on here? How can this be? I mean, come on. These are residential areas right in the middle of populated areas, big buildings, apartment buildings, collapsing, people inside, and they're just walking away? What's going on here?" And my friend simply shrugged his shoulder and looked up and said, like that. There was no other explanation. But now you know. The math is there. You can get, again, all the details are in here, all the calculations, not in the book itself, but in the endnotes of the book, not in the original text. All the details are there. You could check it out for yourself. If you're not a mathematician, you could ask a mathematician friend or a science friend. Check it out. The calculations are very straightforward, and it's been verified scientifically. God's hand, not only in history of thousands of years ago, as Gideon was saying, over 2,500 years ago, where's the wonders of God? They're right here. You just have to know what to look for and what to look that didn't happen. Thank you so very much.